Hey folks, this is Zach. I'm hiking in the river with sandals. I'm about to tell you about the opportunity of a lifetime. Traveling overseas. It's something that lots of people want to do. Lots of people have friends who have done it and they think, wow, that's amazing. I have no idea how they afforded it and how they had the time to do it. But there's a really easy way to do it without complaining, oh, I can't, it's too much money, too much time, I couldn't get off work. Teaching. If you are a native English speaker, you could go overseas and teach. And it's not hard. It's really not hard. It's very cheap to get certified. Once you are certified though, just an online thing, you can start looking at schools. And wherever in the world that school is, if you sign up for a 1-year teaching contract, they will almost always pay for your flight. Once you're there, they'll pay for your apartment. Will they pay you much money when you're teaching? No, probably not unless you're in China. And to the best of my knowledge, in China, they only hire people who have more experience teaching. Now, I didn't teach in China. I taught in Indonesia, actually Indonesian Borneo, about as far from where I came from as you could get, 12 time zones away, 12,000 miles away. I got paid $800 a month and the apartment and the flight there and the flight back. So I actually just got paid out, in fact, for the flight back. They just gave me cash money for that and I got my own flight eventually. This is not something that has a big startup cost or anything. You could pay $50 to get certified as teaching English as a foreign language, as one of those teachers. And once you're certified, it doesn't take long until you get a contract with the school. It takes a few months maybe, at worst. And then you could be flying, you could go overseas. You could spend a whole year living in another country, another culture. And when you're done teaching, you don't need to take the flight home. They will almost always let you just take the money for the flight or delay the flight. You could tell them, I'd like to stay here a few more months. Can you help me with the visa? And then once that visa's done, they'll pay for your flight back. You can travel, like not just a 1 weekend trip to Bermuda or where else do people go? Like the Bahamas, that's what I meant, Bahamas. Not just like a 2-week walking tour of Europe that costs half your savings. You could travel and spend years, if you want to, in foreign countries. Literally experiencing the culture, being friends with the local people, having the food, the travel, climbing mountains there, whatever you want to do. And while you're doing all that, while you're actually working and teaching, you'll feel amazing because you're helping people. When I taught, it was mostly kids. I think I taught everyone from ages 3 to 30. It's generally much smaller class sizes than you get in like a full-on school. You could end up teaching classes of 5 to 10. You could end up teaching 20 or 25 if you really wanted to. But it's not a very intimidating thing. People love the foreign teachers. People cut you a bit of slack if you say something stupid or mess up. And the other teachers will do everything they can to help you grow and develop as a teacher, I mean. So for me, when I started teaching, it was COVID time. I had my training, like fitness training certification, and that's what I had been planning to do. I was in the last stages of having a contract to go work still in Borneo as a fitness trainer at a gym. I would have been working with children for most of the time, getting paid room and board and money for food. Then in my spare time, I could have made money on my own training adults. But COVID happened, gyms all closed. I didn't want to go home yet though, so I got certified as a teacher and I went over to Borneo to teach English. And it was such a wild experience. So to start with, I had very little experience teaching. Fitness training is sort of similar, but that's more like a one-on-one or a one-on-two, one-on-three situation. Teaching people is, well, I was awkward at first. No doubt I was awkward. But over the first couple of months, I got much better at it. My lesson planning got better. The teaching itself got better because I realized that people generally respect the teacher. They don't expect you to be perfect. And over time, that helps you actually become more perfect. Comparing me to how I was at the end of the year versus the start of the year was such a difference. Like, I could jump right back in now, plan lessons and teach. It would be no problem at all. It would be like easy job. I'd say the hardest part for me about teaching, and the reason why I wouldn't teach at another after-school English place as opposed to a normal K through 12 English teaching school, or just like being an English teacher at a normal school overseas, What I did was after school English. So all those kids had gone to school and their parents were paying for private English classes after school, which unfortunately meant that my main goal was not always to get the kids the best education possible. It was also to make sure the parents stayed happy, which is a lot more complicated than just teaching the kids. And to the best of my abilities, I did just teach the kids. I definitely made enemies with the management by focusing more on the kids and the actual education than pleasing the parents. I say enemies with the management, but at the same time, friends with all the actual teachers. I still have very close friends who I worked with. It was a tough culture to work with in general. Borneo has a lot of different religions, and in some places it's quite traditional, and I'm not a traditional person. Dating is tough over there, especially dating. People are always watching you, and they don't like seeing you with girls, or if you're a woman over there, they don't like seeing you with local men. But the teaching itself was actually pretty easy once I got used to it. And if you're like a good public speaker, it would be really easy for you to get used to. One of the most satisfying jobs, I'd say. And that's it. After I've worked in a nursing home too. I'm planning to be working at a hotel soon. There's nothing like, at the end of the day, having taught people skills that will help them succeed in life. It's one of the most emotionally satisfying jobs you could have, in my opinion. So I only ended up teaching there for a year. That's how long my contract was. I tried to travel there afterwards, and that's its own story. But the teaching itself, I feel like that was the least of the challenges working in that place. If I ever taught overseas again, which I do want to, it'd probably be somewhere a bit more developed. I don't like big cities or anything. I like nature, but I want to teach somewhere where the power doesn't go out at least once or twice a day. Then you have to reboot up the computer while the lesson's still going, and like 5 minutes later you're back and the lesson's like, hey kids, sorry about that, blackout. I would like to work somewhere, maybe China or something. I know they pay much better, and they are quite careful about making sure everything functions right. But it was absolutely wild working in Indonesian Borneo. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of a lesson and, 5 times a day there's a call to prayer from all the mosques. And randomly I'd be teaching and then I'll just hear, oh, from outside. And I'd say, okay kids, we gotta be quiet a minute because there's no way I could talk over that, the muezzin, the one who's doing the call to prayer over the loudspeakers. And that was always slightly awkward because you're not allowed to say it's noisy or anything. People actually have been sent to jail for complaining about how loud the call to prayer is, so I didn't want to do that. But honestly, even with all those complaints, I would highly recommend teaching as a job for anyone who either wants to work with people, wants to like do a job that's actually helpful to society, or who just wants to travel overseas and experience another culture. The hardest thing to adjust to in foreign countries when you're working there, I'd say, is the power structure. When I started teaching, I thought, okay, my biggest challenge is just going to be teaching the classes. But it wasn't. Once I actually got used to it, that was easy. The challenges were more working with people who, some of them seemed more focused on pleasing parents than actually teaching the children. Because, of course, the parents had to pay money for these private lessons, so the management's first job was to keep the parents paying money. At one point, at 2 points, I did have like an issue with management because I was teaching a class and there were 2 students who just, out of all the students I had, they were buzzkills, I have to say it. They'd go into class, they'd barely talk. Everyone else would just they respond to questions, they tell me how they're doing. We'd have long conversations. These 2 kids they barely speak. I had to pry every bit of talking out of them, and that's most of how we learned. It was all conversations. And they added another person to that class, and she was clearly eager to learn, but just being in the class with those 2 made it way harder for her, and she didn't enroll in the next book. I felt so bad for her. Then there was another time where somehow I got stuck teaching a class where everyone was at a different level. Everyone from people who spoke almost perfect English to one kid who barely understood English at all. But for the most part, the classes were pretty even. I felt like every hour I was teaching was an hour well spent, you know, like I wasn't even thinking about how much money I was making. It was just like doing good work. I know I'm not the only one who thinks like that, because when I was traveling overseas while I wasn't teaching, I met a lot of people from various countries. I met a Ukrainian guy, I met a British guy. They had both worked mostly teaching in China for decades. Each of them had taught for 20 or 30 years there. Incredibly, two of them actually had, two of them have been working in Wuhan, China, until weeks before the virus broke out, and they escaped just in time, like they knew it was happening. But every English teacher, every overseas English teacher I met has been one of the happiest people I've ever met. They've worked for decades, they say they love it, whether it's teaching kids or teaching adults. It's something that if you've never traveled overseas and you're interested in it, even if you're sort of afraid of like uprooting your life, going to a place that you don't really fully understand, that's normal. Everyone who travels experiences that. If you're at all interested in traveling and you think, I can't do it for this reason, that reason, try teaching. Schools will almost always accommodate you. If you have kids or something, you could probably travel with them even. It's such an amazing thing to do. It's such a like foundational experience in life. Like it changes so much of your life. If you're interested in traveling, then try teaching. The worst that can happen is you won't like it. But if you do like it, it'll definitely change how you think about everything. And there's no better overseas experience if you want to stay a whole year or longer. So anyway, folks, peace out. I'll see you all next time. And till then, stay safe and try something new.